You're up.
Okay, so my name is Victoria, and I'm going to be responding to Nemo's claim that Microsoft Windows OS offers significant advantages over any other device with an operating system. His claims are that 1, Windows OS is more consistently used, and then 2, Windows OS is more versatile. 3, he used a counterclaim that Windows-based computers are cheaper than Apple computers, and that people say that Windows are more expensive. I'm going to be talking about how some of the evidence is dated, and how the second claim isn't fully developed, and how the counterclaim isn't necessarily an argument. Okay, so his first claim is that Windows OS is more consistently used, and to me this sounds sort of like, well, everyone's doing it, so I will too, which isn't what I think he was trying to get across, but the way it was worded could have been different, because just because it's been more consistently used doesn't mean that it's like better, it just means just more people are using it. The backing for the claim was that if everyone uses a certain operating system and software, it's easier to share information with one another. This data is from 1999 though, so it's almost 20 years old. The problem with this is that the information could have been accurate 18 years ago, but not so much now. So maybe some more newer evidence could have been used to make it stronger. And then in terms of phones right now, Android holds close to 52% of the sales, while Apple's iOS controls around 42% of market sales, and Windows phones comes with 6% of sales. These mobile device statistics show that Androids were the leading operating system, with Windows coming in last. And then another issue with the data used was that the statistic talking about how government websites were visited 45.7% by Windows devices, 25.7% from Apple devices, and 18% from Android devices. The problem with this is that although Windows operating system was used the most, it wasn't even half of the numbers, and then the other two operating systems weren't that far off either. His second claim is that Windows OS is more versatile, but studies that I found stated that the Windows Phone App Store is far behind the Android. Android apps are available in a store called Google Play with more than 700,000 apps, while Windows Phone Marketplace has around 170,000 apps. If you're talking about like versatility, you want to have many different functions or activities, but Microsoft doesn't allow app developers to do as they please, meaning that there's less room for personal design, unlike the Android operating system. And then although Windows has strong features, like its ability to run smoothly, it still falls behind on sales compared with other operating systems. And this is because people want like the new vibrant stylishness of a phone versus like a smooth running system that's bland and kind of basic. So Windows falls short of appealing apps, and that decreases the consumer's engagement. Another thing that could have been added is mentioning information about the problems that people run into when using Mac operating systems when they're used to using Microsoft operating systems. Because if Microsoft users don't run into problems when they use Mac operating systems, then there's like less of an argument on which operating system is better. And then his counterclaim was that Windows are more expensive than other operating systems. According to Forbes, the Apple brand alone is worth $170 billion, and then Microsoft is third on that list, coming with a value of $87 billion. Apple definitely makes way more money despite their higher product prices. Even though your subclaims were that Microsoft operating systems were more consistently used and more versatile, the sales in Apple products have not gone down, and people are still buying them all the time, and they remain on top, certainly for several reasons. If Microsoft was better, then more of the population would use it. So,
You went already.
it's a high.
What's the street this way? Past Euclid and then keep going down, it's gonna be on the right edge, like Target Super Center.
All right, Victoria, I think that you did a good job identifying the advocate's proposition, laying out his secondary claims, and then following that structure. That's solid. My memory is a little bit fuzzy on this, whether he was talking about phones or all kinds of operating systems, and so I'm not exactly sure that we're always talking the same issue in all of the arguments, and that's partially because we've had a distance between when the original presentation was given and now, and also the ambiguity about just using generic terms for the companies Windows, Apples, and Android, for instance. So I think that there might be some conflation of subjects in the course of the argument that makes it a little bit confusing. On the first point, I thought that you had a reasonable argument suggesting that the popularity doesn't necessarily equal something that's better. That's okay. Then you started talking about some of the problems with his backing. I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to try and do Toolman on all of these things. But that's not what you ended up doing. You were just pointing out that the evidence that he presented was old, and I think that's fine. However, the way you make that criticism makes it sound like it's an evaluation of the argument. In other words, here's how he could have done a better job, instead of saying, you can't rely on this evidence at 20 years old on a platforms that change every 6 days, much less every 6 years or 20 years. So they're substantially different, and I think that's the argument that you want to be making there. The statistical information about the use of the phones was fine. Windows lagging behind, of course. That's where I think that there's I'm not sure that he's talking just about the phones. I think his argument might have been broader than that, but the way that you've kind of phrased it here, I think that's an interesting indicator about how maybe Windows is not necessarily as friendly or as accepted as he suggests. This is maybe a different measure of its acceptability, and that might be a good way to do that. The issue about the government websites, I thought that was okay, your analysis there. The second point, we're back to some statistical comparisons, and again, that's perfectly fine. You make an argument that talks about why one of the reasons Apple lags is that they don't have the same vibrant experience that the other ones have. Excuse me, not Apple, Windows lags because they don't have the same vibrant experience that the other ones provide. That sounds like it's a probable reason, but I think you need a little bit of proof on it as opposed to just making that assertion. And again, you're coming back suggesting that he could maybe argue that what the problems with Macs are. That's a suggestion for an evaluation as opposed to a refutation. And then the response on the counterclaim mostly is, again, kind of a statistical comparison. So it's easy to follow. I think some of the issues are being conflated, and it would need to be clearer listening to the argument. If we were having a debate, I'm sure that he would respond by pointing out that he's not necessarily talking just about the phone systems, but about all the operating systems, and that might be a difference. Okay, thank you.